In this episode, you will learn quick stress relief with self-havening, how you can overcome social anxiety, remain calm with discrete techniques, and how you can boost well-being with positive visualization. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest to Find Meaning. Now, let's dive in. Good morning, everybody. My name is James. I'm the host of Man, A Quest to Find Meaning. And today, I have my special guest, Mark Wingfield. How you doing, Mark?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, James. Good morning to you and morning to everybody who's listening.
Let's start off. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Okay, just an ordinary bloke who grew up in southeast of England, went to university in Leeds, developed a business career, did a bit of traveling in between. I've lived in Germany, I've lived in the States, and I developed ultimately a career around manufacturing and exporting and engineering stuff. And then at the end of 2005, the place I was working at, the plant wasn't looking very viable, and they were looking for people to take redundancy. And I thought, this is probably the best option I'm going to get at the moment. So I stuck my hand up and I set up my own business at the end of 2005. It's not the first time I set up my own business. I'd had a business before, which was in Leeds with a partner, and that had fallen to pieces before. So it taught me a lot about conflict. And this new business, I thought, do you know what? I know quite a bit about conflict, and I have a passion for martial arts, and maybe I can use that as part of the story. Anyway, I built up a business from 2000 until lockdown in 2020, and it was developing quite nicely, primarily around conflict, but I was doing a bit of associate training for various people, doing some leadership training, and along the way, I'd picked up a few really interesting skills that perhaps we'll turn back to later on. And then lockdown, just everything stopped. All of my business virtually was face-to-face, so it just died overnight. And I thought, rather than mope about what I can't do, I need to earn some money. What can I do? I'm getting £500 from the government each month, which wasn't going to go very far. And I thought, okay, so I'd come across havening techniques 10 years before, loved it. Sorry, not 10 years before, that's now. Let me think, that would be 6 years before. And absolutely loved it. It's a fantastic intervention for everything from mild anxiety through to complex PTSD. And I'd used it because I have some scary training, which not everybody can access, which is the self-defense stuff. And this was good for one-to-one interventions. I really focused on that, and that's completely changed the focus of my business. I'm now an international trainer in havening techniques. I have been for nearly 3 years now, and I'm recognized as one of the most experienced practitioners in the world. So things have completely changed, and for the better, really. And the old stuff is coming back as well, which is really interesting. Yeah, so that's, if you like, that's a nutshell about my career.
Let's go back a little bit. What was it that specifically put you onto this personal development journey?
I've always been curious. I was like learning. I'm interested by other people, how they tick, and what influences people. So the reason I went for havening was because whoever you are, you have ups and downs, wherever you come from. And this just seemed to be a magical, in inverted commas, approach. It was backed by neuroscience. And when I looked into it, the guy said, you don't have to talk about whatever it is that bothers you. It works on the fact that we are biochemical beings, electrochemical beings. It's a permanent change. We're basically reversing the encoding of trauma, or just reversing something nasty that happened in your life, which you may or may not want to call trauma. And it stays with you for the rest of your life. and it can work on anything to do with emotion. And you can do it over something like Zoom that we're on at the moment, or you can do it over FaceTime or whatever you want to use. And I thought, this sounds far too good to be true. But I like the idea of it. And I knew people that had done it, and I respected them. I also respected the guy who was talking to me, who was a mutual friend of some various people. So I thought, I'll give it a go. And I was blown away by the very first demonstration. And I just thought, wow, did that really happen? And so that put me on the pathway, really. And I just thought, this is fantastic. I've got to do something with it. And I wanted to be a trainer then, back in 2014 when I first started. But it wasn't, not everybody can be a trainer. It took a long time to get into that, to get that opportunity.
What is havening?
Okay, good question. Havening it comes from the term putting people in a safe haven. And very simply, it is actually reversing biologically the way that our brain tries to protect us, but sometimes works too hard. And if you think of a phobia, that's probably the best example. Think of a very common phobia like a spider phobia. Now, we should be wary of creepy crawlers because some of them can kill us. And that's perfectly natural. We're born with that instinct. But when you run away from a spider, when it's tiny, one of these little money spiders, or something that's the size of, for an American audience, a dime or a halfpence piece or a penny, that's just crazy because we are so much bigger. They're not going to hurt us. In some parts of the world, they're venomous and they can kill you, but that's rare. Australia, States, various other places. But we're based in the UK. We really don't have to worry about spiders. The brain will clock something that happens to you. So let's say you, as a child, you woke up in the middle of the night, you got a spider on your face. Oh my goodness. And that can be a scary experience, understandably. And you run away from it. And that starts your traumatic experience with spiders. And the next time you think, oh, crikey, that was horrible. I need to get away from it. You run away, you trip over something, you whack your head, you've got another layer of trauma on the original trauma. And so you build up over the years this massive, oh, crikey, spiders. Where actually with havening, there are lots of different types of havening, but you can go back with something called event havening, which is the first one that you taught. And you go back to the original event, so the spider on your face that you woke up to. We work through, there's something called havening touch, which I'll explain a little bit, which generates the electrochemical process that helps you reverse the original encoding of this is scary, you need to run away, etc. And it's phenomenal because, believe it or not, if it was one instance, you might be able to get rid of that in 10, 15 minutes. If it's very clear what it is, and you never bothered by it again. You're still wary of creepy crawly things because we're born with that. That doesn't go away. But the overreaction, the unhelpful responses that you've had before, whether that be the emotional response, the bodily response, if you've really well defined it, will just go. And there are various other elements of havening that can completely remove it. It's a brilliant way of helping people. And I've helped people who have fibromyalgia, for example, primarily women. They have fibromyalgia and they have aches in their neck or somewhere else in the body. And actually, it's down to trauma. It's not actually a physiological problem. And often when I'm working with somebody, even if they don't have something like fibromyalgia, they have a sort of tightness in their throat or in their chest or butterflies in the stomach or wobbly legs or a headache. And when we do havening for the emotional response, actually we get rid of that somatic, the bodily response as well. So the mind and the body are interconnected, as we know. So it's fascinating how it works. And I just love doing it because you can help with so many different things. And you can self-haven each day and just set yourself up for the day. You can finish the day and try and get a much better night's sleep than you had the last night. So it's a beautiful approach. And I train practitioners to be able to help people, which is in itself a very satisfying thing because I know that they're going out doing wonderful work as well.
Those people out there that might be skeptics and struggle to believe this, what can you say to perhaps make them feel a bit more assured or to even change their mind?
There's lots of things I can say, I think the best thing to do is do something and prove to them. But so I'll do that in a moment. And if you think about all the developments over the years that have, whether it's a wonder drug or whether it's an approach that's helped people, things like NLP, for example, was dismissed as that's just flaky nonsense, through to all kinds of different modalities that people use. Some are obviously beneficial, some you might be a little bit more skeptical about. And I do understand people being skeptical about havening. I was when I first heard about it. But when you now have 4 British university studies that prove the efficacy of havening, so one, I'll take you quickly through them. The first one at King's College London was with veterans. It was all done by the famous therapist Paul McKenna, who is a trainer in havening himself. And just one intervention helped people with their issue, and they were all ex-military. They couldn't work because of their PTSD. And immediate responses, one intervention sustained at 2 months, massively improved, just with one session, less than an hour long. Cardiff Metropolitan University came out with a study which showed that havening reduces cortisol, it reduces blood pressure, and it also reduces heart rate. And this was still happening a month after the intervention. Then you've got Nottingham Trent University. That got interrupted by COVID, unfortunately, those tests. But what it did show is that, and it's proven that havening, the results are immediate. And that's all we can really talk about so far with that study. Reading University, they did a study on resilience and proved that applications of havening basically increases your resilience. So these are, and that only came out last year. So there's more research going on, and people just, it helps to have written stuff, and beautiful that we've got these studies now. And there are other studies going on around the world. There are trials going on with health organizations and all sorts. The proof of the pudding's in the eating. You've got to try it. And this is the frustrating thing with havening, because it sounds too good to be true. People think, dismiss that. You know, that's obviously a lot of rubbish. I encourage people to come on a free session that I do on a regular basis, just to have a go, to learn a little bit about the science, how the science works, to see a demonstration live on somebody. And I know you've seen one. So you can talk to the person afterwards and say, did that really happen? How do you feel? And then to have a go, do some what we call self-havening. And that's what I'd encourage everybody to have a go at in a moment, because I can take you through that. Ideally, we'd be face-to-face. I know this is going out as a podcast. So I've worked with people who are so distressed that they want to work, but they can't even leave their own home because they are so traumatized. And some of these people also would not communicate on a video device. That's my preferred way of doing havening, because I can see them applying what's called havening touch, which I'll come back to in a second. But I have done it on a mobile phone with people who haven't been able to look at themselves or other people. It's not ideal, frankly, but it's better than nothing. And we've got that medium now where people can just listen to it and they can do the actions. So the actions are very simple. There are 3 basic types of what's called havening touch, which is, again, it sounds a little bit strange, but the reason we do this is quite simple. If you are a little bit nervous, how many of us, I'll just put my hands next to the microphone here, how many of us do this? Just rub our palms together. How many of us do that just to calm down a little bit? It's a natural, soothing action. If you wake up in the morning and you've got a really challenging day, you think, oh my goodness, and I'm now going to put my hands on my face, go, oh, drug them across your face. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many times do people do that? Oh, I've got so much on today. Or everything from in a football crowd, people go, oh no, they missed the goal. Oh, it's a soothing action. And the other one, which is probably the one that most people do, is if you put your right hand on your left shoulder and then your left hand on your right shoulder and just gently stroke down to about your elbow, lift up and go to the top again to your shoulders, down, lift up, go to the top. And again, it's a bit like having a hug from somebody. And when I do the training people, I talk about all the neurochemicals that are going on when we do this. One that people have probably heard of is oxytocin, and it's known as that hug chemical by some people. So when you actually do the stroking of the arms and the shoulders, you're getting that lovely feeling of when you're being hugged. And you're also getting serotonin, which a lot of people will recognize the name of, which is a really calming neurotransmitter. You're getting something called GABA. And again, a lovely, soothing action. You're getting some glutamate. It's all about memory transfer and storage. That's part of the integral system that we're working with. I'm not going to go too deeply into the science, but essentially what we do with havening is we stop a signal being sent between the neurons in the brain to feel rubbish, to run away, to do whatever you are programmed to do from the initial time when you had a problem and you got away from it by doing a certain action. And any triggers, so any of your senses, so sight, sound, smell, what you feel, what you touch, what you taste, any of those might have been captured at the time of traumatization and you might be triggered by in the future. So we take away the trigger. An easy one to think of is somebody who's been in the military environment and they've been on a battlefield and loud bangs, which could be bullets, missiles, mortars, whatever, because they've been traumatized in that experience where something horrific has happened. Years later, when they hear fireworks going off, it's almost being like back on the battlefield because one of their triggers is the loud bang.
Mhm.
But equally, they could be walking past something and part of the trigger is a certain piece of clothing, camouflage clothing. It could be sand if they were out in Iraq, Afghanistan. Could be all sorts of different things. We remove the triggers so that you don't have to feel the emotion anymore. And you don't do that evasive action that was probably appropriate for the time when it happened, but isn't any longer. It's unhelpful. Would you like to, you talk about saying to people, if you're scared, should we have a go?
Just quickly, before we have a go, I want to clarify that I had a go at this at Professional Speaking Association, and I had this emotional event. It was rated a 9 out of 10,
Okay.
and by taking us through that test, it took it down to a 3. So this trigger, and I know it personally works, but I just want to clarify that, yeah, from my own perspective, I've seen the impact it has.
Thank you for that, James. And I know what the session that you attended, because I was actually I did a demonstration with a lady, Heather, I think it was. And then we did a joint one. And I said to everybody, you don't have to tell me anything about what it is that bothers you. So it's completely non-disclosure, completely private. But I just asked people to follow what I did. And so that's what you can do, even when you don't even know what the situation is. And we only did it for 5-10 minutes at the most. In fact, probably more like 5 minutes, actually. When you do it for a little bit longer, if you can find out a little bit more about what the background is, even if somebody can't tell you the story, and that sometimes happens, we can still go in with various different types of havening. We were just doing a very simple form of havening, but you can go in with, I've got 11 different types of havening that I use, and just pick at it from different angles, depending on what the situation presents. It's very versatile. And to get from a 9 to a 3 in 5 minutes is pretty good. We can just completely eradicate something if we have the opportunity to do so. It's, yeah, very versatile.
Let's do a demo. And just
Okay.
for the audience out there, I will take the video and I'll probably put it on YouTube separate to the podcast so that people can look at the demo using their eyes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to make this very non-specific, but what I'd like people watching the video or listening to the podcast to do is to think of something that is not extremely traumatic, but something that bothers you right now. So it could be anything from an argument with a partner this morning. It could be you were worried about a relative who's not very well. You're concerned about their well-being. Maybe you've got a big job interview coming up. Maybe you're applying for a job. Maybe you've got a journey to go on and you're not comfortable about it for one reason or another. Or you've got a big date coming up. It could be anything to do with emotion. But this isn't highly traumatic. So please don't go there because this isn't the type of exercise to do for that. But I want you to, just for a moment, connect with whatever it is that you're thinking about that bothers you. And when I say connect with, I want you to really feel how that makes you feel. I'll give you about half a minute to do that, just to really connect. Think about where you were when whatever happened. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel what you felt. and really connect with that in your body. And there might be a tightness somewhere in your throat or in your chest or in your stomach, and connect with that as well. And now we break out of that and apply one of those havening touches that I talked about earlier. So either stroking from the top of your shoulders down to your elbows, lifting up and going back down again, or you can stroke your cheeks, you can go under the eyes, you can do the forehead, or you can just massage your palms together. It's important that you apply one of these all the time, please, whilst we're doing this. And as you apply the touch, what I'd like you to do now is just think of your favorite place in the world. Somewhere that you feel really relaxed in. You feel calm, you feel safe, and it's just lovely to be there. So imagine you're there right now. And if you want to shut your eyes to imagine that you're there, maybe that'll help you get there. And just imagine walking, if you're able to walk through that place, but just move through that place. And as you keep moving through, if you're able to put one step after the other, just feel connection with the floor. If you're wheeling a wheelchair, then just feel the connection with moving the wheels around. And every time you make that movement, you're feeling a little bit lighter, a little bit more relaxed, just feeling calm and content and in a much, much better place. And in your mind's eye, have a look around where you are. See all the beautiful things that you know and love. And just take it all in. Let out any tension that's anywhere in your body. Take a nice big breath in and breathe out that tension. Keep walking through and just enjoy. Maybe there's a smell in the air, pleasant smell. Maybe there's some sound. It could be anything from birds singing to crash of the waves. Just focus on that. Look around you, see all the colors that you can see, the landscapes that you can see. Maybe there's some things of interest, people in the distance maybe. Just feel a little bit lighter every single movement that you make. Looking around, maybe there's something you want to note and come back to later. Might want to just notice what the wind's doing if you're outside. Maybe there's a light wind on your face. Maybe you can feel the gentle heat of the sun on. Not too much, not scorching. It's just a nice, pleasant temperature. And notice the clothes that you're wearing. It's nice and warm. You've probably just got some light clothing on. That little bit of wind, it's nice and comfortable. Just the perfect place to walk. Soak up the atmosphere. Just relax. Feel content. Feel the most content you've felt in a long time. Keep on stroking your arms or your face or your palms all the time that you're imagining walking through this lovely place. And as you do this, just be thankful for all those brilliant things you've got in your life that are positive. And think about what else you can do to feel even better. So let's take a little pause there. And that's a very short, very simple introduction to self-havening. So it's not complicated at all. You could do that anytime. Just distract yourself. And that's a strong recommendation. If you're ever upset by anything, then take yourself off in your mind. Just distract yourself with something very pleasant. And you might have a particular hobby. You might have an interest of some kind, a sport that you do. Just imagine that you're either playing the sport, you're listening to music, going to the theatre, knitting, if that's your thing, all the way through to building a shed, if you'd rather build a shed, dig the garden, whatever it is, whatever you love to do, tend the flowers, look after your cat, your dog, your guinea pig, whatever. And just get yourself lost in that, something that's pleasant. That's the idea, because you can enjoy this sort of stuff unbelievably as well. And you will downregulate immediately. How are you feeling, James, after that?
I'm feeling very calm and relaxed.
Good.
I'm feeling good. Would it be possible to do, because you mentioned about doing havening first thing in the morning to set you up for the day. How would somebody go about doing that?
Okay. Yeah. For some people, unfortunately, they're going to be in a position where they don't have a huge amount of hope. Their life's not been good to them recently. And so one thing that is a very nice little thing to do is to, again, it's essential that you apply the Haven touch as you're doing this. And I can explain the reasons why in a moment. But just to say, it could be as simple as the word hope, just hope. Or I hope that I'm going to have a better day today. I hope that rubbing my arms like this is going to be useful. I hope that I have a better week this week. I hope that I'm able to see my kids soon. I hope that I will get a job soon. I hope that the worst is over. I hope that things get better from here. And what you're actually saying to yourself biologically is, I'm safe. And that's why this stuff works. So biochemically, what we're doing is we're generating something called a delta wave. And this delta wave, in turn, also helps us release all those chemicals that I talked about earlier. So the serotonin, the oxytocin, GABA, which make us feel good, calm, relaxed. And we're developing new neural pathways at the same time. So we're actually, there's another technique that we have, which is saying, what if I do have a good day today? What if I had a better day today? We're not saying we're going to, because that won't resonate with a lot of people. But what if I had a better day today? And your mind is now going forward thinking, if I had a better day, I'd do this, or that would happen. So we're actually future pacing and saying, oh, okay, it's giving us a little bit of a direction. It's not saying it's going to happen, because that would be misleading, because it might not. But what it is doing is saying there's some opportunity here. There's opportunity where I didn't see it before. And that can give people a lot of motivation and strength to do the next step, whatever the next step for them is. So that's a lovely thing. What if I have a good day today? What if I get on well with the people that I need to get on well with? Get a job. What if I earn some money today? What if I eat well today? What if I don't need that substance today? What if I just have a good day? And then right at the end of the day, it could be, what if I get a great night's sleep? What if I wake up tomorrow and it's a better day again? What if my problems are just a little bit smaller tomorrow? What if I allow myself to recognize that I'm making progress? What if I give myself permission to let go? What if I give myself permission to move on? These are very strong things. And the delta waves that we generate as adults, we don't actually experience delta waves in the brain very much apart from in really deep sleep. When I have an expression that my trainer Tony taught me, which was the filing cabinets adjust themselves overnight, the memory filing cabinets. That happens in deep sleep. When we generate this artificially by stroking our arms or face or hands, those delta waves, part of our brain thinks, oh, we're asleep or we're going to sleep. And so it can help at the end of the day us actually get to sleep. So it's a nice little, you can't get to sleep at night. So you relax yourself by doing some havening. And then as you're doing the havening, because you're in bed and because you generate delta waves, the body says, oh, we better go to sleep then. Because that's when we normally experience these delta waves. So it's not going to guarantee off you go to bed, sleep, but it can certainly help. And if you're lying in bed with somebody else and you think, how do I do that? Stroking the arms, because I'll just elbow them. Just do your arms together or gently just stroke your face, and then you're not disturbing whoever's fast asleep next door to you.
It makes complete sense, because as an adult, going into what I do now, there's a lot of people say about hugging yourself. And by hugging yourself, your arms are around here, so you automatically get in that almost the same position as the havening. And it's almost like you start to feel better. But also, as a baby, people used to hug you, used to rub your face, used to help you to relax by rubbing the tops of your body, your shoulders, oh, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of that.
Yeah. And it's no wonder either, because these are completely natural things. We have the soothing touch from a mother or a father as soon as the baby's born. And just on a side note here, there is fantastic work being done with newborn babies all round the birth, pre-birth, postnatal work. I've got a colleague in the States who is doing just fantastic work stopping postnatal depression, just stopping it, because it's not actually about the birth trauma, which a lot of people think it is. It's actually, if somebody's had trauma prior to the birth, these are the people that will have postnatal depression. There's something called gestational diabetes, which I didn't even know about until quite recently. And there is a video online. If you go to perinatalhavening.org, the first thing is a video of a heavily pregnant lady. She's got one of those devices that measures her blood sugar level. As she havens, the level goes down. My colleague Kim is taking away gestational diabetes. It's incredible. And yet I've been talking to a couple of midwife groups, and because havening isn't yet approved by NICE to go into the NHS, they won't even look at it. It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. You just need an open mind. You're not going to do any harm whatsoever. We can only do good. And havening's been around for 14 years now. The book, When the Past is Always Present, came out in 2010. And it's been enhanced, it's been proven to work in so many different situations, whether it's helping post-traumatic disorder in veterans through to helping traumatized refugees who've been in a boat and lost relatives in the sea and crossing continents, all sorts of horrible stuff, through to business people who need to boost their confidence in some shape or form. I've dealt with boardroom conflicts and the aftermath of that, loss of confidence, to horrific attacks and abuse of various kinds, just eradicated with havening very quickly in comparison to most options. Under the NHS, you have CBT and you have something called EMDR, both of which have their place. But I've trained a lot of the EMDR practitioners who prefer havening because it's a lot gentler, it's a lot quicker. They've got all their great experience from EMDR, and EMDR works, but it can be a real challenge for both the client and the practitioner. CBT, yeah, it's got really a lot of things going for it. It works, but the clue's in the name: cognitive behavioral therapy. What drives us is actually the amygdala, our emotions. So yes, cognitive behavioral therapy definitely has its place and it does a lot of good. However, your immediate reaction is driven by the amygdala. It's faster than the connection to the cognitive function. So we are driven by our fight or flight mechanism drives us to do, not by how we think about things so much. That has its place and it's important as well. However, cognitive behavioral therapy is if you're in a position to sit down and think about it, break it all down, which a lot of people aren't. And by the way, they don't want to talk about it anyway. Havening, you don't have to talk about it. So it solves so many potential, or takes so many potential roadblocks out of the way. And
So if
that's why it works so well.
If there's somebody who's having a bad day or has had major setbacks, but in a public place, what can they do? Because obviously doing that would make them a bit socially awkward.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things for you. The first thing is people are very familiar with hands being rubbed together, and you can actually talk with the hands. If you're on the video, you'll see me now. Yeah, actually, do you know what, James? What you could do is this. And people often just talk with their hands like this. If you've got a desk, you can put your hands under the desk and people don't know that you're actually rubbing your hands. So there are other things. I can remember vividly doing a really important talk once at a safety summit some years ago. And I was nervous because I had my perfect audience in front of me. And I thought, if this goes well, bingo. If it didn't go well, massive opportunity missed. So although I knew my talk inside out and backwards, I was still nervous because it meant a lot to me. So I actually disappeared into the men's loos. I didn't need the loo, but I went into one of the toilet cubicles. I sat on the pan and I just did some self-havening. So you can, if there's a private place you can go to, you can do whichever type of havening touch you wish. But yes, you're right. Sometimes you're out in the open, but you can pretend that your hands are cold. Oh, it's cold today, isn't it? Yeah.
A really hot sunny day at 24 degrees. It's colder, isn't it?
Well, in that case, it's just, wonder what might be happening today. And a lot of people do just move their hands about when they're talking. It's a bit like standing on one leg, hopping on, just being a little bit of movement. People fidget. So that's a bit of a fidget in some people's eyes, just rubbing their hands together. Yeah, there's ways of doing that. I would also encourage people to breathe in for 5 and breathe out for 5 immediately. And that will control your heart rate variability so that, again, you reduce cortisol through doing that. You produce something called acetylcholine, which helps focus. You increase DHEA, which makes you feel good. And it drops down your adrenaline levels as well. Breathing in for 5, there's an unnatural breathing action, but it will help you control your heart rate variability. If you learn to do it, and you can learn to do it very quickly, or you learn how to do it immediately when you need to, then it works brilliantly. And at the same time, if you can think about the most magical thing that's ever happened to you, that's a really personal thing. So whether it's your getting married, birth of your first child, which is what I always use, or whether it's winning a cup, whatever motivates you, it was just the best moment of my life. If you can think of that at the same time as doing the breathing technique, even doing the hands together as well, doing your self-havening, yeah, that's a magical combination. Yeah, that's a top tip. A few top tips.
Perfect. So those people who want to know more, what are your contact details and how can they get in touch? And do you run any events coming up?
Absolutely. Thank you, James. I run free intros to Havening where you'll see the demo, you'll learn about the science, and then you have a go yourself under my guidance. And they're on Zoom every month. And if you want to look those up, the easiest thing is if you go to https://bit.ly/havening, Havening. That's capital H and then a capital E for events, EVENTS. That will take you to a web page which shows the latest things. My website is haveningmax.com and you can get me from there. So it's HAVENINGMAX.com. And yeah, people will find me there. Or they'll find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Just put Mark Wingfield with a G and you'll find me.
Thank you, Mark.